Way back in 2014, I reviewed my first ever pay-per-view for Wrestling with Regret. I reviewed WrestleMania 30 just after it happened. Now, many of you might have never seen this review for Mania 30, and there is a reason for that. It's not a great reason, but it's a reason. So in the very early days of this channel, I was uploading videos not just to YouTube, but also a site called Blip. Some of y'all might remember what Blip was. It was kind of an alternative to YouTube. It was a place where a lot of content creators were actually starting to put their things up. I found out about Blip through Channel Awesome because I was following that site a lot back then, and they were definitely on the Blip train. It was very much like Dailymotion, where you could put up videos with a lot of, let's just say, we'll call it like it is, copyrighted material, and you weren't really dinged as harshly for it as you were on YouTube, and you could still make money off those videos. So that was definitely felt like a big avenue for a lot of those creators at the time. So I was trying to do that as well, along with the YouTube uploads. And for whatever reason, there were just a couple of videos I decided to upload just to Blip and not to YouTube. And then eventually like one or two of those made it onto the YouTube channel. But the one that never did was my WrestleMania 30 review. And it wasn't even a very thorough or complete review. It's only like 13 minutes long, and I'm just talking about a few of the big things that I liked and didn't like. And so it wasn't really as thorough a review as I do now, but I did definitely have some takes back then in 2014, watching it as it was going on. And so I'm not going to relist or reissue the whole old review because that's just, it's also dated and kind of cringe now, but I will show you one clip, one of my final takes about WrestleMania 30 right after it happened. Let me show you this clip.
And in my opinion, when you take all the different elements of the show, the pacing, the presentation, the match quality, the moments, and oh my god, there were some extremely awesome moments, and I'm not even including the stuff that happened backstage in the pre-taped skits. When you combine all that stuff together, you can make the case that WrestleMania 30 was not only one of the greatest manias of all time, but undoubtedly the best mania of all time.
Wow, how times change in 2024. Well, obviously that was a bit of a recency bias claim that I made back then. I certainly don't believe it's the greatest WrestleMania of all time, like I might have argued for it back then. But where does it fall 10 years later? On this, the 10th anniversary of this show first happening, it's time for me to, I guess, kind of revive some a lost media, a lost episode in Wrestling with Regret lore, and give you my review of WWE WrestleMania 30, classic pay-per-view style, from April 6th, 2014 at the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's very noteworthy. It's the first WrestleMania on the WWE Network. The network had just debuted about a month or two before this. I vividly recall being one of those early adopters of the network and how difficult it was to use and how limited the content was back then. Needless to say, the world of streaming and WWE has changed so much from that point. Like, the network was considered this really like out there idea, it felt like at the time. And now not only have they surpassed that, I feel like, we in America don't get the network anymore. It's on Peacock, but the network is still standing tall, and it has really been the blueprint for all these different like wrestling streaming sites that we see today. I still have very strong feelings and memories associated with being a fan around this time. And of course, it's still in the early days of the channel when I was still kind of learning how to do YouTube and all that sort of thing. It definitely a frustrating time to be a fan in many respects. Like, this is just after CM Punk had left the company after the Royal Rumble, and there was all this kind of anti-WWE sentiment that was out there. And it was really coming to roost in a very interesting way as it played out with storylines, especially the main event. I think a lot of other things about this card here are kind of affected by the CM Punk walkout, but obviously this is the biggest one. It all centers around the main event because Batista is supposed to come back in. He's this big movie star, made good. He's coming back here. It just felt so similar to what The Rock did at 27 through 29, and I can also recall that not ultimately at the end not being received the best way. So not only are you getting kind of a repeat of that with Batista coming in for 30, it's also coming on the heels of this time where WWE is firmly rejecting anything WWE is intentionally trying to do. They're like, no thank you, we want our GOAT man, Daniel Bryan, and that was basically what they had to do. They had to change things because the demand was so great for it, and the reception to what they were trying to feed you with Batista and Randy Orton was just, it was not not the business. You know, it's if it were not for CM Punk leaving the way he did in 2014, you know, many things about this card, and as far as I'm concerned, a lot of today's wrestling history would not have happened or would be very different. The opening package shows this big boisterous parade through Bourbon Street with some WWE wrestlers there, like the Bellas and Sheamus and whatnot. I love this older footage of like Bobby Heenan and Andre the Giant being superimposed onto the parade for Mania 3. Austin's there too. HBK soaring over Bourbon Street on his zip line, which to me is just a hilarious visual. A record 75,000 plus packed the Superdome for this show. The number of pay-per-view buys for the show is low. It's about 400,000 buys, but take into account that the network had just come out. So they're combining the domestic pay-per-view buys with the network subscriptions. And around this time, they reported about 670,000 active network subscriptions, meaning since that is the maximum number of people who could have watched WrestleMania through the network, they lumped that in as well. So this is the first time we're having to combine not just pay-per-view buys, which has always been the way it had been done, but now you have to take the streaming numbers into effect as well. And Hulk Hogan is the guest host for this show, opening things up. We got a Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and John Bradshaw Layfield on the call for this event. Look at those bright, nearly glowing, bioluminescent bottles of Mountain Dew at their desk. Hogan on the mic immediately calls it the Silverdome, and he says, "You're watching on the WWF network, brother." I'm amazed he got the name of the city correct. He recalls being there for the first WrestleMania, then fast forward 30 years later at the Silverdome, brother. "Oh, I'm sorry, it's the Superdome, brothers. I was just thinking about body slamming Andre the Giant." Yes, WrestleMania 30 is such an important event, he is already thinking about an older WrestleMania. Suddenly the glass shatters and out comes Stone Cold Steve Austin to a thunderous ovation. Look at this face-off here with Austin and Hogan. That's a what if for sure. Austin saying it's good to be back at the Silverdome. Ribbon Hogan here. He says, "I saw the ass you kicked at WrestleMania 1, Mania 2, Mania 3, all the way to Mania 10, which he was not there for." Austin gives Hogan a Laurel and Hardy handshake in appreciation for all he's done. He puts over how everybody needs to step up at WrestleMania. Then The Rock's music plays, and the man who would one day rule over WWE itself makes his way to the ring. Look at this. The three biggest draws in the company for the last 30 years all share in the ring. Rock's hugging everybody. You love to see it. The Rock says we're in the Superdome. Rock puts over Hogan and Austin, saying there wouldn't be a Cena without a Hogan. There wouldn't be a Yes Movement without Austin versus McMahon. There wouldn't be a Baby Boom without The Rock at WrestleMania. He starts to rhyme out of nowhere, then everyone gets their catchphrases off. Hogan finally gets the name of the venue right, and they toast the crowd. This was just a lot of nothing in the grand scheme of things. It was just what a moment this was. This iconic moment of the three hugest stars in the company's history all sharing a ring. Last time that happened was like 2002 in the build-up to WrestleMania 18. So after all that time has passed, it's great to see these three huge names here together in the ring. That was pretty cool. But what's even cooler? A monster, I turn into a monster. Oh yes, it's the Monster hype package for Daniel Bryan and Triple H. It's one of the best ever. I think if I ever do a video about like the best hype packages of all time, this always seems to come up in my mind, and many others as well, as like the best and the most immortal and the most iconic. It really does. It's a perfect just combination of the song, the subject matter, and the storyline they're telling here. It's just so well done. And it takes us into our first match of the evening, Daniel Bryan versus Triple H. The winner joins the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship later on between Orton and Batista. This show is the culmination, it's the apex, the ultimate climax of the Yes Movement. Daniel Bryan, by the sheer will and stubbornness of the fans, demanding that their hero, Daniel Bryan, get put in the main event. They really had to change a lot of things up. It was that, like I said, it was CM Punk leaving that really affected a lot of things, because the original plans for Mania allegedly were CM Punk versus Triple H and then like Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus. I think that was apparently the plan according to Daniel Bryan's book. And so CM Punk leaving obviously changes all that, and the fans are crapping on this planned Orton Batista thing, and that's how we get to the Yes Movement, where Bryan has got all these extras and these fans coming into the ring with him in this kind of take on Occupy Wall Street. Now it's turned into Occupy Raw. That was very timely at the time, I guess. So you've got Bryan and all of his fans basically holding the show hostage until the Authority acquiesce to his demands and get him in that main event spot. Triple H says, "But you have to beat me first." And that's how we get this matchup. Stephanie McMahon introduces the most powerful man in WWE, her husband Triple H, the Skull King. What an entrance for this guy here. You also see young Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Alexa Bliss there as his masked ladies, concubines perhaps. Each guy's kind of sizing each other up here, but Daniel hitting some big moves on the outside. There's a tornado DDT on the floor and a dive. Back in the ring, Daniel's crotched on the top rope and knocked back onto the floor. They're fighting on the announce table, and Daniel's arm is slammed into the toxic Mountain Dew. We get that hammerlock and slam onto the ring apron for good measure. Triple H getting a crossface applied one time, even hits a tiger suplex on Daniel. Bryan with a top rope sunset flip though, some drop kicks. He's cut off with a big clothesline, and I love Stephanie's reaction at ringside. She just goes, "Yeah! Woo!"
Covering Triple H, covering!
Daniel slips out of a crossface, gets the yes lock in. JBL referring to Bryan as a farm animal. He's also called him a garden gnome so far in the show. Missile dropkick followed up by the yes kicks. The knee plus intercepted with a spine buster. We get the pedigree, but a kick out. Another pedigree countered into a pinfall. I love this counter. Bryan flips out of a back suplex attempt, hits the big knee, covers, and beats Triple H. JBL with a great call saying, "This garden creature is going to the main event." What is a garden creature? After the bell, Stephanie starts slapping the heck out of Bryan. That allows Trips to jump him from behind and just brutalizes that left arm, really leaving him a sitting duck for the main event. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This is just a really well done matchup. If you think again about like those kind of rare moments that, resonate with you over time. If you think about some of the greatest of a certain category, the greatest opening matches in WrestleMania history. For me, it's Bret and Owen, and it's this, and off the top of my head, I can't really think of too many others that can live up to the standards of either of those matches. I mean, it's just a great match that like everyone is invested in too. That's another thing that really puts it over the top, is the story and just how much the fans are demanding for Daniel Bryan to win. Triple H gets a lot of guff for the way that he was pushed over the years in his prime years. He didn't put over a whole lot of people, but when he did it, I think there were very few who could do it like him. I think that's one of his biggest strengths as a performer, is when he finally does put somebody over, he does it in a very big way. So he did a good job playing Bryan's foil at this part of the show. Up next, the New Age Outlaws and Corporate Kane take on Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins. The Shield, the faces that launched 1,000 ships, and I'm not talking about boats in the water. They have just recently completed their babyface turn, smoothing out the tension between them, defying Corporate Kane and the Authority. Then the New Age Outlaws, who came back recently, became like sub-members of the Authority now to help Kane fight them, and that leads us here. One thing I don't like about the new presentation of the Outlaws here in 2014, it's a small thing, but it's also a big thing for me, is that they changed the order of when Road Dogg says, "Oh, you didn't know?" He says it early now, and then you hear da-da-da-da, when it always was da-da-da-da. "Oh, you didn't know?" And like that always, that's how my brain has locked that in. And so when they tried to change that shit in 2014, I was like, no sir. Road Dogg and Billy Gunn come out first to do their shtick. They're interrupted by the Shield's entrance. Then Kane shows up. It starts out with Kane and Ambrose, soon cycles over to Roman and Billy Gunn. Roman's cleaning house, Kane with the goozle, but the Shield lads are all over their opponents. Spear to Kane, Roman with the double spear to the Outlaws. Then a double Shield bomb to Rhodey and Billy for the win. 1 star out of 5 for me on this one. Swift and decisive. Not much you can say about a squash match, but yeah, it's pretty rare to see those at WrestleMania. But it was certainly effective. It was a statement win for the Shield. One of the last really big moments that they would have as a team before their breakup later in the year. And you think about all the different things that have happened to all three guys since this point here. 10 years have passed, and you've got, their breakup, their reunion, the breakup again once Jon Moxley left WWE. Obviously, he seems to be happy for himself in AEW right now, but I wonder, it's like, man, if things were different and if Dean Ambrose had gutted it out and just like stayed in WWE through all that crap and waited for this kind of other side where Vince McMahon's no longer an issue there, and you look at where Roman and Rollins are today, 10 years after this, and it's crazy to think about, where Dean Ambrose, if he were still around, where would he would fit in today's WWE. Backstage, Sergeant Slaughter and Jim Duggan are playing with Slam City toys as referee Danny Davis makes a fast count. Ricky Steamboat walks in and is some karate. Then a guy takes the playset away because Ted DiBiase bought it from them. Why? Why does he want the toys? Who is he defrauding with this? He laughs and walks away, and Ron Simmons dams his way into everyone's hearts. Well, here's a match whose prestige aged like milk after the very first iteration. It's the first ever Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal featuring all these people. It was the first and the last time anyone in the company gave a shit about this. The Big Show and Sheamus are the only ones who get entrances here. They are considered the favorites to win, and some of the names in this matchup, you cannot believe they're a part of this in hindsight, like Rey Mysterio and Dolph Ziggler, Alberto Del Rio, what a fall from grace he had, Cody Rhodes and Kofi Kingston, they got a spot early on where they're both hanging on over the apron. The Great Khali bops Brodus Clay to the floor, but then the three-man band take out Khali. Mark Henry takes out 3MB, and then Big Show dumps out Henry. Santino Marella gets out the Cobra, then takes out the Miz with it. Justin Gabriel with a hell of a bump to the outside. Fandango eliminates Big E and does a little dance, and the crowd Fandango's in response. Remember Fandangoing? That was a fun thing. Ray goes to the 619 on Cesaro, who deflects him and sends him to the floor. Kofi is launched out of the ring but keeps his feet on the steps and is therefore still legal. Cesaro with a big swing on Kofi. JBL's like, throw him into the cheap seat, Cesaro, and Jerry Lawler's just like, that's impossible. Like, thanks, Jerry. Del Rio kicks Dolph off the ropes and he splats onto the floor. Sheamus with some raw power fighting out of the cross arm breaker by ADR, but they both tumble out. We're down to Cesaro and Big Show. The fans do not want to see the big man win here. Show's got it in the bag, but Cesaro slips out and just hups Show up like he was nothing, dumps him to the outside, and wins the inaugural Battle Royal. 2.5 stars out of 5 for me. It was a solid, entertaining battle royal, and it was a great moment at the end. I mean, I can still remember, Cesaro, the way he just picked him up like he was nothing, the greatest of ease for that body slam. And what a star-making moment that was for him, too. You think about it, like in another environment, that would have been at least. It was like the same night that he and Jack Swagger broke up on the pre-show from the Real Americans, and then you got this big moment here. It really felt like they were going to strap a rocket to him, and it was just, what a wasted year it was after this. I mean, if they write books about 2014, one of the biggest question marks is going to be, how did they fuck this up? Back at the announce team, those sodas have not been opened tonight, and I don't think they will. I'm afraid if one of them tries to drink it, it'll just burn through them like battery acid. Up next, Legacy, Legacy, Legacy. And no, I'm not talking about Randy Orton, Ted DiBiase, and Cody Rhodes. I'm talking about the legacy of John Cena is on the line as he takes on the Eater of Worlds, Bray Wyatt. That is the big story here. It is Bray Wyatt's mission to expose John Cena. He considers him to be this fraud, a liar. You don't really believe the hustle, loyalty, respect. There is a monster inside you, and I'm going to expose it at WrestleMania. It's all part of the mind games that Bray and the Wyatts were playing with Cena here. We get a live performance of Bray's theme, and I'm not going to lie, seeing the Wyatt family coming out like this and having their big moment, it makes me feel some kind of way. It was about this time on the show I decided to look at the timeline, and I realized, oh my God, we are almost 2 hours into the show, and we're only entering our 4th match. Bray begins by just trying to goad Cena into hitting him while he's down, and John just keeps telling him, get up. Get up. It's weird seeing him already in kind of a flustered state with Bray's antics, but on this level, so far, the story is working. The crowd with some dueling chants very early on. Bray gets lots of that deliberately paced offense. He shouts to the crowd, "Is this your hero?" And Jerry Lawler very unironically is like, "Yes, he is our hero." Like, oh man. I will say this. The one thing that I think has improved the most in the last 10 years has been the quality of the commentary team. Like, Michael Cole is a totally different person than what he sounds like here. And Jerry Lawler, oh my God, at this point, what were they doing with Jerry Lawler? I feel like he was told by somebody just before this show, hey, it's our first WrestleMania on the network. We're trying to make a big deal of it. Can you please tone it down? And he just someone pissed in his cereal and he's like, I'm going to ruin it for everybody. And I just feel like his whole night of commentary, it has to do with how he is at this point doing face commentary, but he is so bad in this show. He is so bad in this match. Cena finally gets a clothesline off. He's booed. He has a think. Then he starts getting physical, which Bray seems to enjoy. The crowd is sort of dead for John's big descent into madness. Then they just start kind of crapping on it. I don't understand why this is the story that they are telling, where it's like the only thing John Cena can do besides wrestle as he normally does is to be a baddie and just turn heel, I guess, by beating up Bray Wyatt a little bit more. Like, you can wrestle in dominant fashion and not be a dirty heel. It's possible to have that kind of level to your performance. I don't understand why it's just like virtuous or evil, and there's like no in between for Cena in this matchup. Cena does begin doing his big moves of doom. The crowd's shitting all over that. Then Bray hits the spooky crab walk, which causes Cena to freeze in terror. Bray even tries to get the crowd to sing he's got the whole world in his hands, but it dies pretty quickly. Cole's just like a shepherd leading its flock. Cena's flying leg drop and the bump he takes always makes me wince, but none more so than that powerbomb catch Bray did. DDT on the apron. Cena's taken all the big bumps in this one now. The crowd singing they were trying to get started earlier just kind of happens organically again throughout the matchup here. It was pretty cool. We get that moment, the hand waving from the fans on the hard cam. Cena up top looks to dive onto Bray, but goes for Luke Harper and Eric Rowan outside instead. He wants to go for the kill with the steel steps, but dang it, he's just too pure of heart. Bray's cradling Cena's head in his lap and singing now. Why? Cena busts out an AA out of nowhere, but Bray kicks out. Cena's dumped outside, but John tackles Harper through the barricade. We get an STF to Bray and a rope break, Sister Abby and a kick out. Bray's getting frustrated and goes to wreck the Spanish announce desk, to which you can see Ricardo Rodriguez be like, hey, go mess up the French table, get out of here. Bray grabs a chair, then he brings it into the ring and hands it to Cena. He tells him to finish him off, and John Cone, the referee, is like, John, this is not who you are. Like, what is this? Why is the referee got to step in and be the moral arbiter for John Cena in this matchup? Cena swings at Rowan instead. Bray tries to hit Sister Abby again, but Cena with another AA to win. He says hi to all the family and friends, the kids, and John Cena Sr., Johnny Fabulous. And in the end, Cena stayed true to himself. Ick. I give it 2 stars out of 5, and I think I'm being generous with that one because I really did not like this match. You know, I remember back when I watched it at the time, not liking it because the wrong guy won. And I still believe that 10 years later. I think that Bray's career really took a big hit when he lost this match to Cena. And then when I go back and just watch the match itself, I'm like, I hate the story. I just hate this whole like light versus dark. Like, you can do that, but I felt that it was at times got so overwrought and the crowd just wasn't there for it. I think that like if you have some of these moments where it's like Cena's got this conflicted moment where he finally breaks out and does this physical thing, and like you get the sense that they were wanting the crowd to react to it and they just don't. They don't care about this matchup here. And like, it's just not a fun match to get through. And I feel bad saying that, but it's like, it's a slog. The commentary just is so dramatic with it. And it's just a weird vibe where I just don't like the pacing. I don't like most of this matchup. And so, yeah, and it all tops off with, I think, the wrong guy winning. So there you have it. We get a recap of the WWE Hall of Fame. There's Jacob the Snake-Up Roberts, Mr. T, Paul Bearer represented by his 2 sons, Carlos Colon, Lita, Scott Hall. I know he's billed as Razor Ramon when he's inducted, but F it, it's Scott Hall. And the Ultimate Warrior in his penultimate appearance before dying of a massive heart attack 2 days later. And talk about a guy who like got, you know, for what you want to say about the Warrior, he got in the good graces of the company at the absolute perfect time for him before he passed away. And like, you know, it makes me wonder, like, gosh, do you think he really knew that his time was coming up, that he decided like, well, I might as well mend the fences and try and get in the good graces before it all happens? Like, the timing of it, and when he shows up and makes that speech on Raw the next night and dies 1 day later, I mean, that is just some crazy timing that you could not predict. You could not write an outcome like that. And you know, Warrior, he did make that peace. He got that reconciliation with Vince McMahon for whatever that's worth, and he got to be enshrined and immortalized in the company. So at least like his legacy in that sense was secure, because had that not happened, then I think, you know, it would still be the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior kind of vibe from that old DVD. And I think they would look at him very negatively. And obviously, you know, Warrior is a big part of WWE's history and a big part of, you know, why so many fans today became fans when they were kids. And so it's obviously well overdue, and I think it was very fitting, but man, that timing is still just, it trips me out. Up next, The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar. It is the same basic build as you've seen for the last several years, where somebody says, I'm gonna beat the streak now, and Taker's like, no you won't, and that's basically it. And the hype package for this is pretty entertaining, because it starts out with this very old man narration. The one constant in WWE has been The Undertaker's unbeaten streak. By the way, the only footage of the Mania 29 match you're gonna see in this thing are his entrance and his pose at the end. No CM Punk footage to be found. So they ask, can any man defeat him? Smash cut to Paul Heyman, who says, obviously no man can beat him, but what about a beast? And then they're pushing the eat, sleep, conquer the streak to close things out. Taker's entrance is preceded by showing rows of caskets with all of his previous victims' names on them. I'm kind of surprised CM Punk's wasn't just covered in post-it notes. It finally ends on Brock's casket. Taker comes out, gives the casket a look, and it sets it ablaze. Boy, I tell you, there's nothing quite like losing a monumental match like this, decked out in arguably your worst look ever. I do love this shot of the entrance though, the beams of light circling around him with the massive Mania sign in the background. It's pretty cool. Call of the night by Michael Cole as the match begins. This is not gonna be pretty. You know, Taker looks pretty tan for a twice dead man. Brock starts things off by dropping Taker onto his head. Lots of Undertaker slowly working over Lesnar. At one point he goes for the choke slam, and you can hear Paul Heyman scream some very Daffy Duck like, no! Nose!
On the beast.
Brock gets out of it, fighting on the outside. Taker's leg is caught and Brock pushes him onto his back, and that is apparently the point where Undertaker suffers a concussion, and it will greatly affect how the rest of this match goes down. Taker visibly messed up at this point, but the match continues, kinda slow and kinda sad. He does get a DDT off, but is still very slow. How is this match even still happening? Undertaker with a choke slam and a 2 count. Brock hits the F5, but we get another 2 count. Taker suckers Lesnar into Hell's Gate twice, but Brock powers out of it each time. That second time, boy, that bump did not look good. Kimura lock on the dead man, but the Undertaker counters into one of his own, gets up for old school, but Brock catches him. Another F5, another kick out. Let's give the concussed man some German suplexes. At this point in the match, Lawler tries to use the same young lion, old lion analogy that he made for like Rock and Hogan at Mania 18, but this one doesn't quite hit, because again, this is just a harder match to watch. The crowd is dead quiet for a while, finally wakes up when Taker catches Brock doing corner punches, goes for the that's not it. Taker with a tombstone, but we get a kick out. He goes for it again. Lesnar counters out, hits a third F5, the cover, the 3, the streak is over. And you know what? I was there with a bunch of friends at a WrestleMania party. There were about a dozen of us sitting there. We watched that, and there was just, it was a stunned silence. There was a, and then, like we just couldn't believe it. And the only thing that broke the tension was this guy showing up on the camera, and we all had a good laugh over that. But then, wow, just trying to like process what we saw. You know, it always seemed like, oh, it's one you can easily bet on Undertaker. Of course he's gonna win. Of course he's gonna keep the streak going. But nope, they shocked a lot of people doing this. And boy, I think they got enough, they mined enough of those like audience reaction shots to like set them for life for those kind of things. Because it was just that shocking. And the way they prevented, like the way they kept the music from playing for a while, you just let it lay out. No commentary, no music. Took like 30 seconds for Justin Roberts to finally announce Lesnar won. Then more pause, then the music plays. Like that was such a well done way to get that moment across, because the shock was real. It could be felt in the Superdome. It could be felt at the apartment that I was at. You could even feel it at the Silverdome. It was just that crazy. That being said, this was a bad match. Not a great one to end the streak on. I give it 1.5 stars. It was severely impacted, obviously, by the Undertaker's head injury. And sometimes you can see a wrestler get hurt in mid-match and carry on, and it makes it like better somehow. Like it somehow increases the legend, or you say, man, they gutted it out and did a good job, but they did not do a good job here. Like it was just, they couldn't recover from that. There were some moments of brilliance, but it was mostly rough. And I wonder how different that match would have been had the Undertaker stayed healthy. But yeah, it was a scary moment. And famously, the Undertaker goes to the hospital after this, and Vince leaves WrestleMania to go with him, which is a pretty big moment too. And you know what? The debate still rages on to this day, but I still maintain, like I thought back then in 2014, that if anyone was going to break the streak, it might as well have been Lesnar, because like he was a guy who at that time, seemed to be in it and wasn't really going to go anywhere and had that reputation of someone who's believably could do it. I always thought that if you put it on a young guy who didn't pan out, and that was kind of fizzled out, and you can't really talk about the streak anymore because of that, or if, like, say, CM Punk won it at 29 and broke the streak, then he leaves just before this show, and then that streak being over would be for nothing. And so having Lesnar as a guy who is going to be around for the long haul, albeit in this kind of reduced capacity, just builds his legend more. And so I think, it kind of sucked. Like, it's one of those things where, it should go to a young person to pass the torch. But that's not really something that I think, again, the risk to that, I think, was too great. I think that if you want something that's a safe bet, but also really effective, then yeah, it was probably going to be Lesnar and nobody else. Taker takes a long walk back up the ramp, gets that standing ovation, while JBL just keeps murmuring, "What a warrior. He went out like a gladiator, just the way you expect him to. I love that man. What an honor. Chokeslammed me through a limo. My hero. What a warrior." Up next, a fatal 14-way for the Divas Championship as AJ Lee defends against all these ladies. This is officially the Vicky Guerrero Invitational for the Divas Championship. Vicky Guerrero literally up on a pedestal, who screams that she wishes good luck to everyone in the match, especially my rival AJ. The match begins. The Bella Twins get some double team offense in on Layla. It doesn't quite go well. Natalya tries to go for a triple sharpshooter, but she can't quite do it. We get a multi-lady pinfall attempt. The ref does not know what to do here. As the ladies are working, the announcers can't stop talking about the Taker match, so any emotional investment in this match is non-existent. Cameron looks to have suffered a wardrobe malfunction of some sort. Lawler saying his eyeballs are having a pleasure overload. Stop talking, Jerry. Eva Marie shoves Tamina down, then just kind of stands there and then scampers away. The Bella Twins do a double dive onto the other ladies. Then Nikki and Brie briefly fight each other before more women re-enter the ring. Alicia Fox with her very nice backbreaker. Tamina slams Natalya. You can hear one guy chant, "Superfly, Superfly." So Tamina goes up but is pushed off the top. AJ with the Black Widow on Naomi, who taps, and so AJ retains the championship, much to Vicky's chagrin, continuing her then record reign. I'll give it 1 star out of 5. Many of the ladies gave good but brief performances, but it was a big mess. They were not really given much time. It's that, again, we talked about it in the WrestleMania 18 review. This is the death spot after the big emotional, like the weight of that Taker-Lesnar match happening. I mean, some matches got to go there, but you hate to see it for the ladies because there's a no-win situation there. So one day later, AJ Lee would drop the championship to a debuting Paige. Learn all about that in the critically acclaimed film, Fighting with My Family. In the promo zone, we got Mean Gene Okerlund. Here's a blast from the past as he welcomes Hulk Hogan. He starts talking, then he's interrupted by Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, the latter of whom looks like he came from 1885 Hill Valley. Piper tells Hogan that even though talking isn't his strong suit, he's doing a fine job as host of Mania. I love that line. Orndorff telling Hogan he's tired of being reminded every day that he lost the first WrestleMania main event. He and Piper want to go again. Then Mr. T shows up and pities some foos. Then Pat Patterson walks in wearing a referee shirt and is like, "That was 30 years ago. You's gotta get over it." Hogan puts the hand out. Piper can't bring himself to do it, so he grabs Orndorff's weak arm and puts it in Hogan's hand instead. That's amazing. They all bury the hatchet, including Piper and Mr. T. What a genuinely lovely segment this was to see, the principal players of the WrestleMania main event, minus Muhammad Ali, Bob Orton, and Jimmy Snuka, but it was still a tremendous moment to see this here. And Piper's interactions with Hogan are just classic. We get a look at some more Hall of Famers sitting at ringside. Bob Backlund makes a weird face. Bret Hart's just looking at the camera and off to the side like, "Please let this be done." In our main event for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, Randy Orton defends against Batista and Daniel Bryan. Like I said, the original plan seemed to be Orton versus Batista in the main event. Batista was going to be that conquering hero and take the belt from the Authority, and fans were apparently going to go gaga for it, but reality stepped in, and they did not want that to happen. My only thought is, God, imagine if WWE was like, fine, business as usual, head down, we're going to ignore the Daniel Bryan thing, and just go on with Orton versus Batista, and treat this like this is the bee's knees. What would that have even looked like? I mean, just the idea of them, even if Daniel Bryan was not inserted into that match, taking that entire factor out of it, an Orton-Batista match for WrestleMania 30, to me, seemed like the most boring, weakest idea for a main event for a show that big. It just seemed like complete death to me. That would have been hideous. That being said, once Daniel Bryan is inserted into this angle and you know he's going in, it really makes Orton and Batista feel like afterthoughts. So it's a huge reversal, it seems. In that way, I do kind of feel bad. I feel bad for Batista. I think he was probably sold a bill of goods and then it didn't go the way he expected and probably didn't get what he was told he was going to get. He wanted what he wanted and they didn't give it to him. So there you have it. And as far as Orton goes, he's just a body at this point. To me, he's just like Jericho at WrestleMania 18 without the humiliating, being subservient to Stephanie McMahon. Even though in a way he kind of was, because he was part of the Authority. Orton gets the live performance treatment for his entrance, and Batista more like Boo-tista. Bryan is taken out early with his bad arm, so we have Batista and Orton fighting for a while. A lot of it spent on the outside. Batista backdropped into some steps. Back in the ring, Bryan is back in action with the double missile drop kick, many running corner drop kicks. Orton doing a superplex. Bryan just teleports back into the match and hits a flying headbutt. Daniel with the yes lock, but then Triple H and Stephanie McMahon show up. Trips yoinks out the referee. In comes Scott Armstrong, the Authority's favorite official. He comes in, but Bryan is still in the fight. He kicks Scott in the head, then dives onto he and Triple H outside. H-Man brings out Sledgy, but it backfires and Daniel hits him with it. Back to the match we go now. Batista and Orton work together to beat the hell out of Bryan. They hit a Batista Bomb RKO combo through the announce table, but the real victim of that spot is Orton, because you can see how he bumps directly onto the top of one of those TV monitors. Youch to the max. Don't give Bryan the EMT treatment, give it to Orton. But anyway, trainers, EMTs, referees down as Bryan is carted away. I do recall seeing this as it was happening and just laughing my ass off when that shows up, because okay, they are really piling it on now. How many more odds can one man overcome? Is someone going to pull out a gun and shoot Daniel in this match as well? So we're back to Orton versus Batista for a minute. Daniel somehow manages to fight his way out of the stretcher. Wow, I was worried for a whole minute. The yes lock on Orton is broken up. The yes lock on Batista is broken up. Orton hits the RKO on Batista and we get a kick out. There's not too many times that's ever happened. I'm kind of surprised they don't make a bigger deal out of that. Batista hits his bomb on Orton. Daniel comes back with a knee and the yes lock on Bats. Batista taps and Bryan wins the titles. Yeselmania in full effect. All that confetti and all those yes chants as WrestleMania 30 comes to a close. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. I don't think it's as great as the opener, personally, but I think the moment of Daniel Bryan winning and overcoming all those odds, as ridiculous as it got at times, I think was an incredible moment. What a validation for him. It just really shows the power of you can be this big star without being a big dude, without having the showiest and flashiest personality. Not every star, not every hero, not every relatable babyface is going to be like Austin or The Rock, but if you've got somebody with a connection, then you can really do no wrong, regardless of what they look like or what they wrestle like. He is an all-time hero in this one. I think that the match at times felt a bit too similar to the Triple Threat at Mania 20, which also had a very similar cathartic, the indie darling beats Triple H, or whatever, or beats the Authority to become the champion. We get that emotional moment here. It just seems that WWE, in the build-up to this, really misjudged Bryan's value as a potential top guy. You cannot tell me that this was their plan all along, because if it was, they would also have to admit they did a very bad job telling that story for a good middle chunk of it. Starting off at SummerSlam the previous year, yeah, that makes sense that you go from that to WrestleMania. But then you've got all this stuff in the middle, which makes it seem like we are doing everything we can to denote Daniel Bryan and get him out of this picture. Let's put him with the Wyatt family. And it just does not stick. And that could not have been part of the plan originally. It's either maliciousness and they're just bad at it, or they just couldn't see what they had. But regardless of all that, at least they did a great job executing the climax of the story. It's just a damn shame he won't get to hold on to the belt for long due to his injuries. So, can you make the argument like 2014 Bryan tried doing, that this is the greatest WrestleMania of all time? No, I don't think you can. I would give WrestleMania 30 a B grade. It is certainly a good WrestleMania. I wouldn't call it the greatest by any stretch. I think that obviously the arc of Daniel Bryan, from what happens in the opener to what happens at the end and his big triumph, really, really well done. Buffo work by WWE there. I think that really helped elevate the grade for this show. The novelty of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal also helped with this. Again, not trying to take hindsight into it and knowing just how badly they screw up Cesaro this year. It's a great moment for Cesaro. But boy, the Cena-Bray match really ages poorly over time, and Taker versus Lesnar, I don't disagree with who won. The match just sucked, and that was really unfortunate. But it's not the greatest WrestleMania, but there are a lot of good moments in it. It's got a hell of an ending. It's got like the ultimate happy ending, and you really can't ask for more than that at a show like WrestleMania. A lot of moments we're still talking about to this day. You can't really argue with that. And so, yeah, I think that Mania 30 is good, but no, sorry, 29-year-old Brian, not the greatest. But what did you think of WrestleMania 30? How about this review of Mania 30? Let me know in the comment section below. Folks, it's been great to relive this, I guess you can call it now, a classic pay-per-view. WrestleMania 30, 10 years later. I hope this isn't poorly dated now, but I am very much excited for what's going to happen this weekend at the time this video is dropping for WrestleMania 40. I hope you have a great WrestleMania weekend, folks. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.